Okay, hello everyone. Um, this is Batya Yaniger from the Viktor Frankl Institute in Israel. And I want to talk today about values as a bridge between worlds, and particularly between the world of religion and the world of psychology. But it could be between people of different cultures, different traditions, different everything. And I want to start with a story which really a true story that happened. And I will refer back to it as I continue. So my son plays as a musician in a musical ensemble, and they perform in different places, and sometimes they perform in different countries also. So they went to, I think it was the Philippines or someplace. They went to perform, and on the way back, one of the musicians could not get on his flight without paying extra for his musical instrument. And he was very upset about that. And he said, "This is just not fair. No one told me ahead of time I would have to pay extra for my instrument, and I am not going to pay it. And you have to let me on the plane, and let me talk to the person who's higher position." And he was really arguing. So they were really late. They were afraid that they were going to miss their flight. And if they would miss their flight, it would not be pleasant at all because they would have to book themselves into a hotel for an extra night, and it would be complicated. And my son tried to convince him to talk him out of uh, arguing and just pay it already, and the other members just went ahead. They said, look, we can't wait anymore. We don't want to miss our flight. We can't wait. And my son said, what, I'm going to leave my friend here, stranded here? So he stayed with him, and he managed to calm him down and convince him that, okay, we'll help you out and don't worry about it, but like, let's just go, because otherwise it'll be very difficult to have to stay later and worry about a place to stay and worry about food and so forth. And they just barely got their flight. And he had to get home to his family and everything. But he thought, well, my friend here, he doesn't speak the language. He's going to be all in it by himself here. Okay, so you see here an example of a value, the value of loyalty to a friend, of not wanting to abandon him, right? But the other members of the orchestra did not do what my son did. They went ahead. And this has to do with how we look at values and how we understand what is the meaning of the moment, what is actually calling us, what the situation is calling us to do. It's not enough. You need to know what the value is, but you need to also know what it's calling you to do. So I'm going to start the screen share, and I'm going to start with a few questions. So first, second. So first, understanding the gap. What is the gap between religion and psychology? It's between, first of all, the material and the spiritual, because psychology is very much focused on what can you see, what can you measure, what can you figure out about the psyche and about how things work in the world. And religion deals with the spirit. There's also a difference between general rules of religion. Religion hands down general rules of how we should behave, and psychology talks about the individual's choice. It doesn't have to do with any kind of values that are out there. It's what the individual decides. So logotherapy creates a bridge, because logotherapy does talk about values, and it talks about the spiritual dimension of a person, and it talks about conscience. And all of this, as we'll see, makes logotherapy a key give it a key function, in creating this bridge. Okay, so what are the questions? How are values relevant to psychology? Because ordinarily, as I said, psychology does not deal with values. We can also ask, how is individual choice relevant to religion? Because religion doesn't apparently give you choices. It just has certain ethical code, and you need to follow that. And thirdly, if we have conscience, do we need divine revelation? Maybe conscience is all we need. As Frankl said, that even if we don't have the 10 commandments, we still have the millions, the thousands of commandments every day, as he put it in the Will to Meaning, that ask us, that require things from us. And if we have divine revelation, maybe that's all you need. Then do we need conscience? So maybe it's just either or. Maybe we only need one or the other, but is there a need for both? So to answer the first question, what are values in psychology? Conscience is the mediator between the self and something other than the self. Now, that starts with that assumption that values are objective, that there's something that's true, that life is calling us into a certain response that's required of us. The self cannot be responsible merely to itself. If I just make up the meaning, then it's not meaningful at all, because I just made it up, and I could make up something else just as well, right? But it's only if it's something outside myself that's addressing me, that's pulling me. So we still decide. The conscience is still the person deciding. So how can you say that it's something objective? Because we originate from transcendence. So you can't get anywhere with understanding logotherapy without that foundation of understanding that we are spiritual beings. We have a transcendent origin. So therefore, when we act according to our conscience, our conscience is inside of us, but it's something that's transcendent, even though it's inside of us. Because we have some kind of channel inside of us for hearing something transcendent. Therefore, values are relevant to psychology only when we acknowledge the spiritual dimension. It's because logotherapy acknowledges the spiritual dimension that values are relevant to psychology. To answer the second question, what about individual choice in religion, in the context of religion? So what I'm about to tell you now is from a religious viewpoint. I'm not saying that, you still have the ability to make choices, but in the text, in the religious text, it talks about how no book can inform the meaning of the moment. And that's why there's a law that says do what's upright and good. It doesn't need to tell you every detail about everything, because it would be impossible to tell you about every detail of everything that's going to happen in your life. No book could tell my son, you're going to be in the airport with your friend, and and when he decides that he doesn't want to pay for his musical instrument, you should stay with him. There's no book he could open up and look up and find that answer, right? So therefore, there's no other choice but to use your conscience. And secondly, each individual is called to serve with their unique awareness and feelings, which come from your particular soul root. The first thing I said is a commentary of Nachmanides on the Torah. The no book can inform the meaning of the moment. He says that about the verse, Vasita hayashar v'hatov, do what's upright and good. And so it gives you this general rule: do what's upright and good, assuming you know what's upright and good, right? Now, the second point, how each individual serves with their particular soul root. That's Rabbi Natan of Nemirov, who's the student of Rabbi Nachman, the Hasidic tradition. And he says that each individual has to have a personal, individual relationship with God, right? So it's not just that religion speaks to everybody as a group, but it speaks to each and every individual. Now, thirdly, choice is a divine attribute. Choice is part of who we are as human beings. Freedom of choice is not just something like a nice little perk. Isn't it good? We also get to choose. But it's what makes you free, what makes you able to decide for yourself based on your ability to evaluate your life and you have that ability. That's what makes us spiritual beings, and therefore it's really important and essential to implement our freedom. Therefore, choice is relevant to religion when we acknowledge that our relationship with God is personal and that we are addressed as individuals. And that's why Frankl said that for religion to survive, it has to be personalized. And this does not mean that we should throw away all the tradition. It just means that while we are listening and understanding the tradition, we need to know at the same time that it's not enough. If we don't also think about, well, what does God want from me in particular? Okay, now, based on what I've said up until now, we can now approach the whole question of the relationship between conscience and divine revelation. Okay, so does one contradict the other? I think it should be clear by now that they're not contradictory at all, that they complement each other. That even if we have one particular religion or another that has certain rules and certain requirements and rituals, but all of humanity is responsible for actions that depend on understanding of the heart. There's a rabbi, a contemporary rabbi who passed away about 10 years ago, Rabbi Shlomo Wolbe. He said that he called it understanding of the heart, which is like conscience, the intuitive sense that he said that's the common denominator between all people, all humanity, right? So even if there's certain commitments that different religious people have to their religion, but there's something that we all have in common. And that's the bridge between us. We all have the ability to sense what's right for this moment, for this situation. So conscience is actually the foundation and prerequisite for divine revelation, right? You cannot have divine revelation if you don't have conscience that can listen to what's being revealed to you and to understand its truths. If it doesn't make sense to you, it doesn't have some truth, rings true to you, then you're not going to accept it. So once you accept, you commit yourself because you feel like you identify with the group, or you identify with what's being said generally. But you still need to have that ability to accept it for some reason. Now, divine revelation reveals the meaning that's hidden from human intellect. If you really believe in divine revelation, and you say that divine revelation is the revealed wisdom and will of the Creator, why is that being revealed to you if you could know it from your conscience? Well, the idea is that human intellect is limited, and there are things that we would not know if we did not have something beyond ourselves to reveal it to us, in addition to which our own self-deception, rationalizations, emotions that get in the way make it difficult for us to always follow our conscience or even hear our conscience. Frankl says that we have to be half sure but wholehearted, that we can never be 100% sure, because even though conscience does direct you the right way, we're not always the best, we're not always perfect at hearing it. So that's why, according to a religious mindset, you still need, in other words, conscience is the necessary but not sufficient guideline. But then in addition to that, you have divine revelation. Okay, so that's how they complement each other. And the bridge is the values. You can see that the values are relevant on both sides, both to conscience and to divine revelation. Now, I said that we need to be able to hear the meaning, to hear the values. So there's an idea that Rabbi Abraham Cook talks about, that to be human, in addition to everything Frankl says about to be human is to be free and to have self-transcendence and so on and so forth, he says it's to be able to absorb something into yourself. And this really fits very well with the idea of logotherapy, of meaning being something objective and beyond you, so therefore it's something you need to take into yourself from outside yourself. And even if it's your own conscience, as we said, It's your own conscience, but it's a transcendent voice inside of you, right? So you need to be able to be receptive to those values. And just like we know in logotherapy that being human means responding to the questions the life asks. So we have to first be able to hear the question, and then we can answer it. The Shema, which is, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. That whole foundation of Judaism says we understand through inner hearing, which Rabbi David Cohen, who was the student of Rabbi Kook, he said that it's not through seeing, it's not through philosophy, it's through an inner hearing, through again going back to the understanding of the heart. So logotherapy also has very much of this listening orientation, listening, because I think that when you see, and I didn't plan on talking about the difference between seeing and listening, but just to say very briefly, I think you can be a detached observer when you're looking at something. Now, ideally, if you look with compassion, you look at the other with compassion and love, then you see in a different way. You see them, and you don't see them just in a detached kind of way. But when you're listening, it's calling you. There's a message for me. I'm being addressed by this. And so it connects you to the object that you're listening to much more than just observing. So I want to talk a little bit about the value of love. Frankl said that you need to be able to see who the person can be, not just who they are now. And when you help them to see who they are capable of being, just even by your seeing them that way, you see someone who's angry, and you can just imagine, what would they look like if they weren't angry, if they knew how to come to terms with the other person and make peace with them. Then you help them become that, because then they start to see themselves differently. Rabbi Yehuda Amital from the yeshiva in Har Etzion, which is near where I live, he said that human kindness does not need to be commanded. And he brings an example. He talked about the two nations of Ammon and Moab, which in the Torah, it talks about how the Jewish people were in the desert. They just came out of being slaves in Egypt, and they want to pass through their land. And they did not give them food and water. They just fought with them instead, and they did not welcome them. And they're held accountable for that. So he says, how can they be held accountable? There's no commandment in their books, that tells them you have to greet people with food and water. So he says, but it's telling you that you don't need a commandment for that. There are things that you don't need to be told. Because you're a human being and you have a conscience, you should not need to be told that. And he says to dismiss the importance of conscience is to create a split between God who created the world and God who gave the Torah. If the Torah comes from God, then does conscience, the wisdom that God implanted in man's heart, not come from God? It has to be that God created a conscience and he wants us to use it. So it's impossible, Rabbi Kook says, also not to be filled with love for every creature, because God created the world. He created all of us. And part and parcel of loving God is loving what God created, loving God's creation. God loves it. God loves people. Then how could we not love everybody? Okay, so there's one more point I want to say about the value of love is, again, Rabbi Natan of Nemirov. He says, each person has something precious and unique, and we have to be receptive to this precious aspect. Again, the idea of being receptive to taking in and absorbing something that we can learn from someone else, right? By treating each person with reverence. Right? You treat a really great person with reverence. Yeah, that we understand. But to treat every single person with reverence, because he says every single person in the world, you can find something there that you can't find anywhere else in the world. Because every person is completely unique. And so you have to treat them with reverence because of that. You have to recognize that they have something really special that you're not going to find anywhere else. And you have to think about, what can I learn from this person? Now, I just want to say a word about emotions. So conscience is made up of both intellect and emotions, a combination, because it's that balance. It's that intuitive sense that we get from seeing the whole picture, from seeing everything in its context. So there's a verse that says, those who insult and do not insult back are like the sun that comes out and shines, something like that. Okay. Now, Rabbi Cook explains this. He says, when it says they do not insult back, it doesn't mean they don't feel insulted. It's just that they don't use their feelings as an excuse to hurt the other person. He says, if you think that you are supposed to just swallow it and like pretend that you're not feeling hurt, right? No, he said that's not real. That's not human. So I think this goes to show how the ought not to be. You know, that when we experience something that's distressing to us, that's hurtful, or we see another person that's hurt, and we say, this ought not to be. I shouldn't be. You know, my dignity tells me that I shouldn't be allowing people to hurt me like that, right? So you have a right to feel that, and you have a right to do something about that. You just don't have a right to hurt the person in return just because they did something to you. If you need to prevent yourself from being hurt, that's something else. But you need to feel the full range of emotions, because then it makes you sensitive to cultivate self-control, awareness, a correct perspective on the suffering of others. When you suffer yourself and you use that as a way to help you understand the suffering of others, then you're finding the meaning in your suffering. There's another verse that I want to mention, which is, do not curse the deaf and do not put a stumbling block before the blind. You shall fear the Lord your God. Now this refrain, you shall fear the Lord your God, comes again and again in a series of verses. And what is it coming to tell us? Well, if you're cursing someone who's deaf, then you think, well, what do I care? I can curse him and he's deaf and he won't hear me. But the point is that, what do you do when you think no one's looking? That's what fear of God means. And it means that you have to care about, you have to behave in a way that you know that you are existentially responsible, as Frankl says. Your responsibility lies with your awareness of it, not because somebody else is demanding something of you. And this quote that I want to just quote Saria Chantal, who said in a conversation that I had with her, said, we experience objective truths subjectively, and in this way the meaning touches us, right? It has to be something you feel. It touches you deep inside. You know, it's not something you understand intellectually. You know, you just feel it, you sense it. So that's where emotions, people ask about, you know, where do you find emotions in logotherapy? You know, that's where you find emotions. The emotions connect you to values because you have a feeling for this value. And when my son felt like I just can't leave my friend behind here, what, I'm just going to go, like, you just leave him? There was a feeling that told him that he just has to. Okay. So now in conclusion, what is the bridge of values? The meaning of a moment, as my friend Dita Kimura, you know, likes to say, you know, is a derivative of ultimate meaning. There's a connection between ultimate meaning, which we learn from divine revelation and religious teachings and tradition, right? But conscience also picks up what is the ultimate meaning, what are eternal values. But the meaning of the moment comes from understanding what those values are. So unique meanings require a unique response. This particular situation never happened before, will never happen again. You have to be able to recognize what is the meaning of the moment based on your understanding of values in general. And that's why Frankl said that if religion is to survive, it has to be profoundly personalized. So as soon as we personalize religion, we engage in an intimate dialogue with life, in an intimate dialogue with God. we can call it life, and that's fine. That's why Frankl left it open to atheists, agnostics, religious people, religions of all kinds. In other words, when we talk about God, God is speaking to us through life, right? So you can just say you're having this conversation with life, or you can say you're having a conversation with God through life. God is sending me a message through my life, through what's happening right now. And as soon as we acknowledge the spiritual dimension in psychology, then we access our conscience, which recognizes the universal value together with its application in unique situations. And as soon as we are aware of the foundation of values, we understand that religion and psychology are part of the same phenomenon of being human. Frankl said that religion is a human phenomenon, and therefore psychology should not dismiss it. And values belong to both worlds, right? And that's why they're a bridge, very simply. So I want to just review a few value-enhancing habits that I thought I would spell out the word heaven, like to have a heavenly perspective on yourself and a heavenly perspective on life, which is habits, like drop the habits and beliefs that make you value blind and adopt those that allow you to see hidden values. Emotion, be loving and compassionate to both yourself and others. Attention, pay attention to the need and how you are needed, right? Because one thing is what the person needs, the other is what are you capable of giving, right? This is the meaning of the moment. Values, make values your focus and trust life to give you what you need to fulfill your mission. If this is what you're meant to do, life will give you what you need to do it. And enter the space, the spiritual dimension. Frankl says that when you enter the noetic dimension, self-transcendence means it's like you're entering another dimension. You know, you're coming out of just the material dimension, and you're not going and sitting on a mountaintop and contemplating. You know, you're very much grounded and part of the world, but you're in a different dimension within the world, the dimension of self-transcendence within the world, because you transcend your ego that's taking you in directions of bad choices, and you're able to make meaningful choices. And then no one else. Play your role, but with humility, knowing that you're a meaningful part of a meaningful whole, as Lucas says, that you're not doing this because you want to brag and boast and look how great I am, but that you understand that the role you have to play, as I said before, you look at each person as someone special who has something you can't find anywhere else. So when you realize the role you have to play is something unique, that no one else can do what you can do, right? Then that's when you become a meaningful part of a meaningful whole. And that's when you're really able to join with others and communicate with them, because you are not putting yourself above them. You're on the same level with them. It's just, here's what I have to contribute. Like, and now I want to be receptive to hearing what you have to contribute. Okay, so that's it. I don't know how long that took me, but
perfect.
but I want to open up to questions.
Thank you, Batya. Thanks for your great presentations. Yeah, and I just want to open up the discussion as well to everybody. You can put your questions in the chat if you're more comfortable with that, or you can simply go on or unmute yourself and ask the question directly to Batya.
I will ask a question then. Do you find, and I work with young people a lot, but just the discussion of values, identifying values, being willing to talk about values sometimes is a difficult topic?
Well, I think that you have to adapt yourself to the language that people speak. And that includes what kind of language do young people speak. And even children, if you say, like, how do you think your brother felt when you did that? Or, like sometimes even the language of feelings really crosses over to the language of values very easily because, what's important to the other person is a value for you, right? It's a value to care about how the other person feels, right? So that's the way that you can talk about it. And you can talk about like what is important to you, why is this important to you? So you just use whatever language makes sense to them.
Thank you. I'm not quite sure it is a question, but I just really enjoyed how you spoke about emotions and feelings, because I too have the feeling that it's kind of a thing in logotherapy that we are not so much about feelings and emotions. And so maybe you can even expand a little bit on that.
Okay.
How logotherapy and feelings go together, or why they sometimes are perceived as not being compatible.
Right. Well, people usually divide emotions up into negative emotions and positive emotions. And some people don't want to even use the word negative or positive, but I think it is appropriate because what's negative has a negative energy to it. It makes you feel kind of chaotic inside and stirs you up in a way that's not always so helpful. It doesn't generate a good response sometimes. Put it that way. You can be angry, and then it doesn't allow you to respond the way you would like to. We get into emotional reactivity, right? We react instead of responding, and yet when you know what makes you feel bad, that, as I said, that tells you what ought not to be. That tells you why is this making me feel so bad? That tells me what value is underlying that. It tells me what I don't like. What I don't like, I can infer from that what I do like, what I really would like, how I would like this person to behave. And so you can tell the person, when you tell to me that way, somehow it kind of touches me. It touches the nerve, like that. So, but if you tell to me in a different way, I will be able to receive it better. I was just telling someone this recently, who was this client, and I was saying, so tell the person, if he said he feels uncomfortable about it because he knows his wife is right, but he feels, it kind of touches the nerves. So tell her you understand that she means well, first of all, and and tell her how he could say it a different way that would help him feel, be more, give her a better response than he is. And I think definitely when it comes to the positive emotions, like joy and enthusiasm for life, and joy and just gratitude, all of those things are so important. Those really show what our values are, because we value what we value. We realize that those are important things. That's why we try to to seek those things out. So so that's what makes you alive. Like your emotions make you alive, right? So I think that logotherapy just doesn't talk enough about it, maybe because Frankl didn't talk enough about it. But he himself said he learned from his father and from his mother. His father was kind of more a rational person, his mother more emotional. So I think he actually does. His personality made a little bit of an influence in logotherapy, but I think he does really blend the two very much, and I think that's what logotherapy is trying to teach, is to have that balance, to like feel your emotions, but don't let them be in charge of your life, and and just know how to conduct yourself, and guide yourself, and like by looking at your emotions, objectively and saying, like, why am I feeling that way? What, again, the question of value, you know, what value is underlying the feeling? What is the meaning of the feeling? Is like, what value is underlying that feeling?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Are there any more questions or maybe even thoughts you want to share on this topic of values and bridging worlds? Nice. Yeah.
Do you know, Sabine, where the survey is supposed to be?
I was going to post it in the chat. There should be on the session page where the chat and the Q&A is, the very last button should say survey, and there you can and you're kindly asked to help us by completing this survey for this session, but also for all the other sessions you're going to hopefully enjoy, and let us know about it. Yeah, because well, I don't want to cut anything short, but if there aren't any immediate questions, I would stop the session here, and you're more than welcome.
There's a hand up. There's a hand up.
There's a hand up. Oh yeah, I just.
Oh, or is it a clapping? I'm not sure.
Hi, Batya. I have a question.
Perfect.
Thank you for. I enjoy so much. My question is, does personalizing religion refer spirituality? And what are the differences between religiosity and spirituality according to the Frankel?
Oh, the difference between religiosity and spirituality.
And does personalizing religion refer to spirituality?
Oh, okay. So it's two parts to the question. What is the personalizing religion, and how is that different from spirituality?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so religion it has two parts to it, I guess, because there's the ritual or the ethical codes, you know, that different religions have, and then there's the spirituality per se. Frankl has three different words he uses: the spiritual dimension, the human dimension, and the noetic dimension. They all mean the same thing, because what he means to say is what makes us human. What makes us human is our ability to reach out to ultimate meaning, you know, which through religion or through nature or through some other way. In other words, maybe spirituality is according to Frankl, is kind of the general, the broad meaning. Like I said before, we need to be able to be receptive altogether, to listen in order to hear religious teaching, right? So you need to have the spiritual dimension, which we all have, which is common to all of us. So the spiritual dimension just means to say it's the part of us which is free and which is capable of recognizing values. And then religion would be the choice that people make based on who they are, and, you know, and their traditions and so forth, right? Frankl said that religion is like different languages, you know, so just like people speak different languages, there's different religions, but the spiritual dimension is, you know, is how we are capable of being religious at all. Does that make sense?
Yeah, can we say that spiritual dimension covers religious dimension, religiosity?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Good question.
Thank you very much. Do we have any more questions? While you're thinking about whether you have or haven't any questions, I just was going to share that, of course, you are more than invited to use the various forms of connecting and networking throughout the conference, especially during the lunchtime and after the last sessions, to get in touch with groups of people or individually. If you have further questions, for example, you can set up meetings with specific people. So we really invite you to make use of that, because as this is not a conference that is held in person, we still want to have as much opportunity as possible to interact and to connect and to network. So I'm just looking at the chat and at the panel if there are any more questions coming up. Okay, if we don't have any more questions, I just want to say a heartfelt thank you to Batya Yaniger for her great and very inspiring and very deep presentation. I think we have a lot of food for thought now. And I will close the session now, and the session will be, as all sessions, available for review and replay later on, so we can go back and dive into it once more if we feel like it. Thanks everybody for attending. I hope you had a great time, and thank you, Batya, for your presentation.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.